contractors, contractors.
A lot of money.
It'll happen soon.
He gave me 200,000 and then
But you didn't like get
Somebody wants, they probably want to tear it down.
so then she's had it written all these years. And she has to have what's called.
How's Mikey doing?
He's doing good. Really good. Yeah, actually we had my son hit me specialist. The specialist today for my wife's reason that
money, she would have had to have that. So I don't know what she's getting. She got a bid on the roof.
Exactly, yeah.
She's still, still need a lot of renovations, even if we did the famous project.
Got electric.
She's still gonna need about 70,000 in the house anyway.
Oh, you do?
Because all they do is elevate.
Yeah, I know. And then she's getting a bid on flood insurance.
You're on the edge.
It'll go up.
So we had that big flood and big hailstorms in 213 and 215. And so State Farm is canceling a lot of policies. Yeah, in town here and out in the country. And so I got it. We have family farm. We have 4 acres. We sold to the city.
That was probably a good
West
thing.
of IBM.
Well, the trees across the
So
front.
they can't, the State Farm canceled that. And they did have like $22,000. So luckily we got the policy from but then somebody emailed me and said that they were looking for something other than farmers. I don't know. Farmers was the only one that paid like all the
Yeah, I don't like insurance companies.
Should once you, I think you start. We're still on. Thank you. Deb, go ahead and hit sync timer and let's see. It's just impossible. It says reset. Reset.
This is our
Big chunk.
when you get to general business, you'll hear about it. Especially.
No, That's where we went back. And they're going to with his work. So I said, I will take the 7. Her dad. 7. Her dad said he wasn't going to take her.
I know, as soon as I do. They didn't do All right, we're going to go ahead and call to order the regular Board of Trustees meeting for April 2nd, 2018. Speaking of Lord. And the last full board business meeting for this board. So I just wanted to, we're going to do an official, just to also let people know, next April 16th, we're going to have instead of a workshop, we're going to have a reception for the outgoing trustees. Dan and Jim, who's retiring prematurely, but we're going to let it go. So anybody's welcome to join us at 5:30 and also welcome the new trustees. As soon as they're done, we'll
Good time for a moment of silence.
yes. Give me an extra one. Okay, yeah. Will the clerk please call the roll? Sorry, I know we can screen no conferences. All right.
Mayor Sullivan.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Greenberg.
Present.
Trustee Caravas.
Present.
Trustee Waugh.
Present.
Trustee Kerr.
Present.
Trustee Drysdale.
Present.
Trustee Miller.
Present.
All right, thank you. Please stand for the pledge. Now we have a true, hopefully reflective luminous.
Longer than ever. So you're going to email me the web, so when I go home I can listen.
All right, thank you. All right. This is off to an interesting start. All right, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda, please?
I move that we approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second that.
I'll go ahead and call for the vote. And the agenda is approved, 7-0, thank you. All right, turn it over to Sergeant Chris for a sheriff report.
All right, well, good evening. First on my list is just, I attended last week a meeting with Kim, Dave, Joe, and JJ concerning the power outage coming up. So, working with that, working our angle of it with dispatch, getting everybody up to speed that it's gonna happen. I've already got some overtime deputies coming in to cover the town that night, so we're good to go there. We're gonna start gearing up for extra duty staffing May, right prior to Memorial Day. We'll bring in parks patrol guys on the Saturday, Sunday, and also on the holidays, so Memorial Day will close the spot for that as well. And, predicting that it's gonna be busy in the parks. And then starting up a little bit of conversation with some local residents regarding the traffic calming issues again for this year, and pretty much status quo. We're gonna do this basically the same thing we did before. We're looking at maybe some different verbiage on the local traffic only signs, make it a little bit more you're welcome, but, as opposed to only locals type thing. So just to see how that feels. But other than that, it's kind of status quo so far. And that's all I have.
All right, any questions for the sheriff? Since you brought up the power outage, I just wanted to ask staff, is that something you're gonna cover in your report in terms of what's the communication plan? I hadn't really heard much.
I was gonna touch on it in the staff reports.
Okay, all right, well, I think we're there.
Oh, we're there. Okay, well, we can start that. Kim is in charge of the communications and the records.
Hi. So we met last week with, as Sergeant Chris said, JJ from the fire department working with Joe in engineering, chamber to get out the word. We did put out our first e-blast to the town residents. The time is from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. on Sunday morning, but it's when you go to bed Saturday night at 2 a.m. And so in terms of impact, we felt like it would be, most businesses could open. The plan is really for 2 hours, but it could go to 4. And so then we need, the next piece is to work with our Health and Human Services Commission and also JJ and Bill on those residents that might have some medical issues and need continual power. And then also businesses in terms of some health requirements, making sure that you have power the whole time. So that's kind of the next step. And we sent the first email out exactly 30 days in advance of the event.
Would you also touch upon the parking study, please, the chamber?
Oh,
The
sure.
chamber solution.
Oh, we'll do.
Can I'm so sorry, I totally missed whatever e-blast going on. I don't think I'm actually getting an e-blast anymore. Mine are getting caught in the barracuda spam filter, I think, so I'll read a little bit. So remind me again when
Part
the
2
dates are.
staff reports is we started with a new IT firm and we started yesterday. And so they've heard from several people today that Barracuda's blocking many emails from staff as well. So they were looking into that today.
Can you say the date and the times again one more time? for the
Sure,
power outage?
April 29th from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. It's a Sunday.
Thank you.
I got the email, it's gonna be in this week's paper.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and then we'll continue to meet every other week with fire, engineering, police, and make sure we're all kind of on the same page. We do need to reach out to the Lyons Elementary School because they have refrigeration. They're affected, but the middle, senior high school will not take.
Anything else?
Sure, I have a couple more things. Just wanted to let the board know that staff did meet with Boulder County to start talking about discussions of buyout properties that they have purchased that we might have an interest in. And so we've kind of started those discussions, looking at maps, talking about levels of maintenance. There is now a property that would help with our transfer of our water line in Apple Valley, so there's a new property we do have an interest in, but we probably will do that more in a workshop or a formal staff report, but I want you to know we've started those discussions with Boulder County regarding those. I think, let's see, get to my next calendar here. We did have our code compliance officer start on Monday of last week. His name's Ian Greer. And he will be really working on education and inventory prioritizing concerns over the remainder of this year and starting full compliance in 2019 in the hopes of just working with people to bring themselves into compliance in between now and then. So you will start seeing him around town more probably. Also, we have interviewed and made an offer for replacement human resources staff. That's covered under the Longmont, or the DOLA staffing grants. On Wednesday of this last week, the water pump station had water turned off for numerous hours while they swapped out the master meter between Longmont and Lyons. And it's kind of fun to report that since it was installed, we have used 1.5 billion gallons of water in our tiny town. And it puts it into perspective of, wow, the water usage. And we are very on the low end of water usage. So we now have a new master meter, and that went without a hitch. We were without water for several hours while they did that, and no problems noted that we've been made aware of. Also, met with CHAPA staff to start talking about financing and strategies for affordable housing, talking about the 9% and the 4%. We can talk about that a little more during the housing update. And let's see, oh, and we did host last Thursday a public session on the basics of short-term rental licensing. We had about 10 interested parties present, which isn't too bad. We think there's approximately 24 that we know of right now, so almost half were there. Went through some of the basics of the ordinance, the applications, the safety issues. We will probably host another one in probably May, before school's out and before summer vacation. The only other item that I do want to mention, and I believe most of the board knows this, is that Paul will be out for a few weeks, probably. We don't have a time frame yet for a family emergency. So we are trying to forward all of his emails and projects onto other staff, so please be patient while we work through that. And but we are still getting his messages and his information out to others. And a reminder that next Saturday, April 7th, will be Board of Trustees orientation for the newly elected officials after the election tomorrow. What's that mean, maybe? Oh, maybe. Do you want to give an election update? I'll have Deb give an election
The
update.
reason why I say maybe with that is because they're counting the ballots, when we count ballots and we're having to check the signatures this year, if the signature isn't correct, we have to send them a letter if it doesn't match. So then asking them to come back in, sign again, and then if it matches, then we can count their ballot. Anyway, we have about 15 of those letters out right now. Those letters do not have to be back until 8 days after the election. So if the count in between some of the trustees is in that range, we won't really be able to tell anybody who won until the 9th day after the election. So, that'll be interesting.
Never done it.
And we have only 454 ballots in so far.
454.
So tomorrow's election day, what are the hours?
7/7. So whatever count we give out last night, just remember it will be unofficial. And there will not, normally we give you the official count the next day, but we won't be able to until the 9th day after the election this time, due to the new election law and the statutes.
Yeah, I had someone saying that they might have thought that they couldn't drop their ballot off until election day, because during the presidential election, it was that way, I guess. And so, I'm wondering if that, I've had a couple people say, well, I didn't know I could drop it off until
And we
Tuesday.
did put that on the website under the election part, but maybe we just needed to put it out more often than what we did.
And maybe we're sending out a reminder tomorrow morning early, just that town hall's open late for dropping off ballots.
Perhaps also it would be a good e-blast to send out to people to go to their post office box to see if they got one of those letters.
Yeah. Or maybe we could even just call, there's not that many, we could just call them too.
Okay, we just have a flood recovery update tonight.
Actually, I have one question about the short-term vacation rule.
Sure.
Move on and make sure there are any others. I saw the enrollment period was really a 30-day sign-up
In April.
in April. My guess is that, do we think that's enough time for people to realize they need to enroll? Or, what's the plan once they sign up? Because, I mean, I'm envisioning some people just can't come into compliance very quickly. And so I think it's an important message so people don't avoid signing up because they feel like they're gonna have to comply immediately with the rules. And I think the intention was to eventually get everybody into compliance, but really for safety reasons, make sure we know where people live and we can get these places numbered. And also just we have the census coming up, and I think that's another reason we need to start talking about the census and the importance of making sure we count everyone and know where people are living. So I don't know if that could be kind of worked into the message that, we're really just looking for you to come in, start to talk to us about information. We're not gonna start fining you or anything like that.
Yes, there were several questions that came up during the session, so it was really helpful for staff to, we're going to put together a frequently asked questions list and get posted so people have some answers. That question did come up in the session. It's basically saying that as of April 1st, we'll be ready to take your applications and start working through this with you. Of course, anytime during the year when someone wants to open one, we want them to come in and apply. So we do need to do a little clarification there because that was interpreted by several people.
Yeah, that's the way I kind of read it, but I think the message is we know there are some out there.
Sure.
It's the ones that are already in existence that we still want to encourage, make sure they come in and they're not fearful, so appreciate that. Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, I did hear that, some of the requirements seem kind of excessive, like requiring screens and doors and windows, which isn't a safety issue, so the question is why is it even required? And then, heating plant, inspections and stuff like that, is it okay if someone just inspects their own heating plant?
Water heater?
Water heater, it's like, I know most people don't, they elect in their own homes, and I'm not sure how much of a real requirement that is.
Well, again, we did not have Paul present, and he was the one who put all this together. Mark Browning from the Planning Commission was there, who was part of most of the discussions and answered what we could. We told them we needed to go back and do a little more research. It kind of came to light with the people who are interested in offering short-term rentals that this is a safety, kind of a preventative measure for not only the town, but also for you as an individual. And how far will your household insurance cover you if you don't have some of those things? So we need to get some more answers, and we'll get those out on that question and answer sheet.
Yeah, I just think the main focus should be on, getting people to pay their taxes and business license and stuff like that. And, definitely obvious safety issues, but some of that stuff seems kind of excessive to me.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking ADUs too at the same time, trying to kind of mixing the two a little bit. I think both programs are kind of the same type of
safety
mitigation, need for safety, just knowing they're out there. Right, thanks. Any other questions for staff? Okay, we will go on and open up audience business.
Oh, we have flood recovery update.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped you, I'm sorry, Richard. Anxiously waiting for flood recovery.
Thank you, Minister.
Are you opening Bone Park? That's my only question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Bone Park Phase 1 is supposed to be officially open in May.
End of April.
Okay.
So thank you for the opportunity to give the flood recovery update. On our Public Works building site, where the developer has asked us, that we've been working with, has asked us to look at some alternatives we think it's probably too late for that, but we're going to entertain whatever options are available there and try to move both projects forward. We're planning to have the rough grading package done sometime in May, so that we can try to get earthwork going and to fill in those ponds and prepare the site. As far as the building is concerned, we've taken kind of a what I would term as an alternative approach, trying to get both the storage building and an improved project on the site. Some think that's where we started with this, but maybe that was before my time. But anyway, I think that's a very significant development in that the storage building is still needed. And so we have kind of a transition plan and then a final plan that will maximize FEMA's funding and also CDBGR, the generosity we receive through the Boulder Collaborative. McConnell Bridge Drive is McConnell Drive Bridge is moving right along, and they're planning on having that open sometime right after the 1st of May or that week. So we'd like to plan some kind of an event to celebrate that, maybe a ribbon cutting or something.
Well, I don't want to jinx it, but I just wanted to say what a great job with the execution of that project. I mean, I think we've been a little lucky with the weather, but otherwise it seems like it's gone really smoothly and,
Yeah, we've got a great contractor and
testing fate here, but
we've got a great contractor and really the efforts of the team, it's come together well. A lot of participants, Joe Cavallo, Tracy, Jim Blankenship, et cetera, just goes on. And then Second Avenue Bridge, we did have a tour with FEMA a week ago Thursday, and that was a really great tour. We got a lot of guidance from FEMA. We helped them understand all the projects that have been completed and were under construction and were proposed, and they've been tremendous in their support along with Homeland Security. And so one of the major issues that we had to discuss with them was McConnell Bridge and the height of the bridge. And they want us to, in order to meet mitigation standards, which I won't bore you, but the bridge needs to be raised up another, we had a 2.5-foot freeboard, and CDOT standards are a 4-foot freeboard in a 100-year flood, over the 100-year floodplain. So they're asking us to raise the bridge up slightly higher than we've designed it, and that will have some implications to the neighborhood and to our budget. And so the team's got some challenges there, but we're working through those. And then Bowen Park Phase 1 I mentioned, hopefully in May. We're pressuring the contractors now a little slow with completing all the punch list items, and that's usually the case in big projects like that, and so we're pressuring them somewhat to get finished. Bowen Park Phase 2, they ran into somewhat of a glory hole out in the middle of the field, and I guess this was a place where there was there must have been a hole or something, and the farmer had filled it in with manure and whatnot, so they've got just tremendously great soil to work with there.
By finding that could actually save us nearly $600,000 of dirt to be brought in. No, it is amazing. If you go out there, it looks like Iowa dirt. So it's like, wow. Yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laverne.
Yeah, thanks, Laverne. Yeah.
It wasn't me,
Oh,
it
Mr.
wasn't us.
Boone. Mr. Boone.
I think it was Charlie Bradford.
Charlie Bradford. Thank you, Charlie.
And then Lions Valley River Park, of course, we're readying that for bids, and we'll be putting that out soon in the next few weeks, hopefully by the end of April at the latest. And we're integrating the wastewater, or the water, it's not wastewater, it's the water outfall.
No, wastewater.
Or, excuse me, wastewater outfall through the park. And that was the direction it needed to go. So we're integrating that into the park. So The whitewater features, they completed November hole and grouted October hole. They're still working on those two. They've started on Arns. They're a little bit behind and we are concerned about that schedule. We actually gave them a change order to bring 2 crews on rather than 1 to try to help them, and that may or may not have been enough. Some people think they'll probably get it done, and some people don't, but we had a meeting this morning and we're monitoring that progress.
And if they don't, it will have an impact on the outdoor games. We'll have to relocate kayaking.
So is it a matter of just needing to be runoff?
Yeah, we need to get
Yes.
runoff. So if, depending on weather, the contract was to be out by April 15th. So it's all weather. I mean, they might be able to hold it off till May 1st if things don't come down too quickly, but.
Right, we're looking at strategies, and there was a meeting this morning to talk about those. I don't have a brief on that just yet. We're working hard to try to make that work and get it all done. But at least, I think at least 3 of them will be done. It's the Black Bear hole is the one that's in question. And then moving on, some of these, there's not a whole lot to report. South St. Vrain, we finally closed that out. So that was a big celebration with us all. It's kind of been a thorn in our side, but we were able to get it finished and get the invoices paid. With the Eastern Corridor, we worked with Smith Environmental and actually got clearance for the environmental. We had a well that came back with some bad samplings. We worked with the environmental, had the well cleared, resampled, and it came back clear. So that was something we were really worried about. It could have been a major impact on our budget and schedule. So that's, we're sailing forward with that project, which is great. And that, of course, on Eastern Trails, we're working with the property owners and doing some surveying, working with we've made some good inroads with the ditch companies, and we got an agreement going with them, and we're working with them. So that's something that's progressing also. That was a concern a month ago. Northwest Utilities, we've been working closely with FEMA, and that was one part of the tour also. They're trying their best to get us mitigation dollars to bring the water line down the road as far as we can, and so there's been some developments there, still not definitive though. However, we are trying to work also with Longmont very closely to see added values with aligning the 2 projects together and scheduling and all that. There's some minor work on the wastewater treatment plant that's moving forward. It's kind of now that the good weather's coming, we can finish that one up. And then elevations, the board had asked me to make a report on 401 Second Ave. We did, the owner did ask for a refund of the deposit on the project, and not to get into too much detail, but that's a 2-story elevation where the lower level is halfway into the ground, so it's a slab on grade at the lower level. So a somewhat complex elevation, not a simple lift a building. You had to basically rebuild the lower level of the building. We did not get any bids on that. The owner's pursuing remodeling the building on her own and to get it rentable again. And we've advised her that a 1-story elevation would probably work a lot better and be a simpler project and a more cost-effective one that we may get bids on. However, she did want her money back from the deposit, and so she had given us $21,875, and that's in your consideration tonight with a check to refund that. That termination was done basically to accommodate her and get some money in her hands, so she had some money to work with. And that was at her request. It was really for no other reason. She's still in the program. She can still re-enter what she wants. Unfortunately, the contract had some language in it that that won't allow us to recoup the money that was spent on her behalf at this time.
What's
We
that
have to
total?
have an executed contract for construction in order to do that. And so that could be a liability to the town of $3,212.54.
And CDBG will pick up, or HMGP will pick up the rest?
Right.
The 30,000?
Right. Most of the cost, this is the owner's 12.5% of what's been spent so far. So I don't know if we want to go any further with the details on that, but we're still trying to work with her and do whatever we can to help her. And then, again, I mentioned that we had FEMA come, so the PAP, the pilot program PAP rewrite, they've finalized that and they've sent that off to Washington. So it's past the state and on to the federal government in Washington. So we should hear about that soon, but so we've passed a major hurdle on that.
Yeah, I would like to spend just a few seconds on this. So, very unusual, FEMA had 3 staff come and spend the entire day, 9 to 4, looking at all of our projects. It was extremely helpful for them to see each of the projects and understand some of the complexities and the timing of that. They literally started the meeting with saying, when we think you received bad advice, when you were told, or when you were encouraged to put all of your parks and these other projects into one pilot program. That one pilot program is $25 million. They pointed out that there was one cultural study missed on Bone Park Phase 2.
It's a cultural survey. So
We did the historic, we did all of that, but there's a cultural piece missing. That alone could then totally endanger that whole $25 million. So they said, we are here to help unravel this pilot program and get it put back together for you. And we want you to be successful in this. They voiced that. But that was our one really at-risk issue they brought up. And it was
well, they committed to help us work through that issue.
They committed to helping us, but.
They've cited examples where this has happened in the past and they've been, successful in working through it, so.
But it is terrifying to me that this one.
It's terrifying, however.
It is, and now it's out of their hands and up at FEMA headquarters, so. Let's see. And in the meantime, we're gonna conduct that cultural survey. We have already started, we have graded that whole lot, and that has, potentially interfered with what might be the history of that lot, so.
The culture we found was the manure.
Manure was our culture.
Which was a great
But
thing.
I just want to be really upfront about that, because that's how they started the meeting, is we think you were given really bad advice by FEMA initially on that project, putting all those projects in one basket.
You guys recording?
Yeah.
There were plenty of us there, and DHSC was there.
Someone took notes.
Oh, they weren't there yet, they came in late. Right, it was just us and them. But they did commit to doing everything possible to help us resolve that, because they should have been there with us along the way, making sure all of those things were done before we went to the next step.
I'm kind of only half kidding. We did take some notes of the meeting and document
Oh,
what
yeah,
happened. Was it?
yeah, it was,
Okay.
Yes, we did. But, the good news is the team had done all the public input on this site and this development, and they were very interested in all that documentation, and that was all done. So this was an environmental, it's
one piece of the environmental.
environmental. It's called a cultural survey, where they go out and actually assess everything that's in the field. There was never, the field's right there.
Yeah, it's on the picture up there.
There's nothing there.
Nothing there back then either.
So they worry about having historic structures that potentially be impacted and whatnot. We don't believe there was anything like that, which I think there's a lot of evidence to that. So one final note, and then if there's any questions, is we hired a new project manager, her name is Nicole Capella. So we're very excited about that. I think she's been with for 3 weeks now. So we've got both project managers hired back again, which is good, taking some pressure off the team.
Great, any questions?
I got a comment. Actually, I finally got over to look at Bone Park at night. It is rather excessive on the design lumens out there. And I'm concerned about Bone Park Phase 2 and whether or not we might have an opportunity to stop something like that happening there. You know, I don't think we want a string of lights going across Bone Park. I just want to make sure that's not in the design. I know we're not doing the lights for ball fields right now, but I don't know about the pathway. Just those lights along the pathway are kind of excessive in my mind. You know, they kind of hurt my eyes. I can walk down Main Street easier than Bone Park now.
It's interesting with the advent of LED lighting. Those of us in the industry were very excited about LED lighting when it came on board. 4 times the light for a quarter of the energy, and it's very focused light, and that's all good. However, there has been nationally input that it's too bright, and actually what's reflecting off the ground is too much. So there may be ways we can look at toning that down somehow. And
I think they're looking at dimmers still for Phase 1 as well.
yeah, that's what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
they're the electrical engineer on that project is reviewing that to see if they can have a dimmer switch for
Yeah,
us.
it's kind of expensive, but it's doable.
Yeah.
It may not be that expensive, but I'm not sure about the Lionsville River Park, how much lighting is on
I
that.
don't think there's much over there.
No, I don't believe there's a lot.
I'm thinking Bone Park Phase 2, there's a
Bone Park
pathway
Phase
going out
2.
to the ball
The
field.
trail.
That one ball field is lighted,
And
yes.
I just want to make sure that we're not going to have a string of lights that are, on all year round, that will, just destroy the view shed out there.
We can check into it. We'll look at that.
Right, and there was a night sky meeting that went on, and we heard similar comments, so it is a concern for the team also. We'll look into it. Thank you.
All right, great. Anything else? All right, thank you. It's a great update, thank you. All right, we'll move on to audience business. This is the portion of the meeting where the audience is welcome to address the board on items that are not on tonight's agenda for public hearing. We do have 6 public hearings on tonight's agenda. So if you're here to speak to the cable television franchise, the rezoning of 109 Park, or the ordinances to increase the penalties for civic and various violations, please hold your comments till the public hearing. I'm actually going to read a proclamation before we get started, and then we'll invite anybody to come forward, give your name and address for the record. Each person will have 4 minutes. But first of all, we have the Arbor Day proclamation, and we are Tree Town, USA, which is why, not the only reason, but one of the reasons we have an ecology board. So in celebration of Arbor Day, I'd like to read this proclamation. So whereas in 1892, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products, and whereas trees in our town increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees wherever they are planted are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, And whereas the town of Lyons, Colorado has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue in its tree planting ways. Now therefore, I, Connie Sullivan, Mayor of the town of Lyons, Colorado, do proclaim April 20th, 2018 as Arbor Day in the town of Lyons. The Board of Trustees, town staff, and I urge all citizens to support our town's urban forestry program and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And I further urge all citizens to plant trees and gladden the hearts. I have to sneeze, I'm sorry. Gladden the hearts and promote well-being of present and future generations. So thank you for that, and thanks to the Ecology Board for always promoting trees in our community. So thank you. All right, with that, we will go and move on to audience business. Would anyone like to speak today?
My name is Larry Quinn, and I have lived at 37 years at 83 County Road 69, just outside of Lyons. I've already provided the Board of Trustees with written comments on both the Highway 7 trail connection and the Martin property proposed trail. I would just like to reiterate a few points tonight. First, on the Highway 7 trail. The pre-flood trail between the town of Lyons and the old St. Vrain Road was a safe trail on a wide embankment, which is great for town and county residents. The current proposal to reconnect the previous trail has been developed with little analysis, design detail, or environmental review. For the past few years during development and implementation of the SSB 3 River Restoration Project in this segment, I have pointed out that such a trail connection would not be saved without a railing or other measures to ensure public safety. Regardless of how narrow a trail proposed, and the 2 to 3 feet mentioned in the board memo probably violates state standards for a trail width in state right-of-way, such a connection without public safety designs will be a liability issue for the town, CDOT, and myself, since I own the river bottom where someone could slip and fall on this 2 to 1 or steeper slope. I have already contacted CDOT about requiring an environmental review before they issue an access permit for such a trail, and I will continue to battle against such a trail unless the town provides a liability waiver for any accidents that occur on such a trail. On the proposed trail connection from Martin parcel to County Road 69, I believe the lack of an existing public right-of-way connection from the parcel except for the river was clear during the Dr. Bob process. The last public meeting on Dr. Bob concluded with a clear understanding that no such connection would be proposed. It is my understanding that a BOT motion was made in December 2017 meeting to allow such a connection but failed due to a second. How has the PCDC stated that such a connection was vetted, and how does the PCDC make a recommendation that violates an approved plan and BOT action? I would hope that the BOT uses some common sense as well as honoring the public processes to at least delay these proposals until the technical and environmental issues are worked out in much more detail.
Thank you. Anyone else for audience business?
Go ahead.
Hi, Doug Giarci. I own the property next to the Martin property, 107 County Road 69. I just wanted to reiterate what Larry had said, and I also, during all of the DRBOP meetings, we all were against any kind of a trail on the Martin property. I was over there today, and there are power lines going across it. There are trees everywhere. What they did to the river is they didn't do anything to the rest of the property except put the 2 channels through it. The map that was on the Lyons website is a very old picture with the new trails superimposed over that. I also wanted to submit these, which are from the Ecology Board advice on the larger buyout properties. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Laverne Johnson, 306 Evans. I'm here to tell you that our 42nd annual Good Old Days is Good Old Day. It's going to be on the 5th Saturday. It has to be changed because there's 5 Saturdays. And Planet Bluegrass, who furnishes music and things for the beer tent and the music will be up in Telluride. So they're asking us, or have told us that they're gonna change it to the 30th of June. And they'll have one day, and Marissa is working on various things. And we're gonna have our annual program at the museum at 1 o'clock. And actually, I think it'll go over good. But I thought if Owen Park was close enough to having a tour or something during that day, it would be nice to have something like at 10 o'clock. And maybe you want to have a dedication or whatever, but it would be nice to kind of have a tour. So I just wanted to bring that to you. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Oh, I must bring it to you.
Getting old.
See how tired.
Nick Angelo, 4089 Union Highway. To my friend Christos. That's Christ is risen in Greek. In celebration of our Easter, which will be next weekend. I'd like to address the corner of Stone Canyon and the highway. The upgrade was never completed. It's basically a mess. And I find it interesting that it's one of maybe only 2 light posts that don't have a banner. So I'd certainly like to know what it takes to get a banner on that for the 2 businesses that are located down there. Sergeant, my condolences on the 3 officers that lost their lives. At the same time that we had another school shooting and another unarmed fellow killed. I don't know what, I just can't figure out what's happening, but something's gotta change. For anybody that thought that maybe through my posts in regard to election issues tomorrow, that I was perhaps comfortable behind a keyboard and computer screen. I want to thank the mayor for posting the statute in regard to election term extensions and the capability that we could also do away with term limits. Certainly, if we can do away with term limits, we can certainly put a 2-year time between when a Board of Trustee member could run again after serving for 2 terms. And that would alleviate some of the concern in regard to experience on the Board of Trustees. I think that if we can do away with term limits altogether, that we could certainly do that at a future date. And that's just, I have many other suggestions, but that's just one thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for our audience business?
Hi, I'm Ian Brighton at 322 Evans. I had 3 things I wanted to bring up. One was trees, since we were talking about Arbor Day. We've lost most of our street trees after the flood. They kind of happened 2 years after the flood. We just lost Kaylee's, and it's really changed the feel of the neighborhood. We're talking about trying to do a little benefit show to raise money for trees. We have 2 renters on our street, and it doesn't make sense for them to invest in a tree when they don't know how long they're going to be there. So these are just issues we're grappling with. I don't have any solutions in mind. I'm just letting you know that it's something that I'm thinking about. And if the ecology board, or if there's any ideas, I'm all ears of how we can try and replace those. We replaced the street trees in our tree lawn, but you know, they're just little stakes right now. So. The other thing is lights, dark skies. So there's a light behind our house right between the post office and our alley. The post office is well lit. They light up their building really well. And in addition, we have a very bright LED that shines in our backyard. I propose we just shut that one off and save the energy. We've already got that alley very well lit with the post office lighting, so let's just, you know, use the federal, you know, make dollars for that and don't worry about ours. And then traffic, I just wanted to say I really appreciate town response. I emailed earlier this week about traffic calming to see what was on the docket, and I got a great response. So again, Chris and Kim both got back right away with suggestions. There was a suggestion that the locals only felt exclusive, and I didn't see it that way, but I'm totally receptive to what folks were saying, and they were very receptive about let's try and find a more neutral message, but also get the point across that slow down in here, and this is a neighborhood. So, and I'm also really keen on trying to find long-term solutions, because it's not just our city, not just our neighborhood. The other side of the highway experiences the same volume. So, again, I don't know what the solutions are, but I do think the new incoming board, it should be one of their priorities is how do we deal with this influx of traffic that's new since about 2012 really started to pick up. So that's all.
Thank you. Anyone else for audience business? Okay, we'll close audience business and we'll move on to the board and commission update. We have the Parks and Rec Commission here today, so I'll invite Doug Stahl and Ian to come on back in.
Thank you so much for having us today and listening to our concerns regarding loss of trails, specifically the trail connecting Bowen Park to South St. Vrain. When the river construction happened between Bowen Park and South St. Vrain, we lost, as Mr. Quinn told us, that 5 to 10 foot trail that connected those two vital areas. It slipped by the Parks and Rec Board oversight, as well as other bodies, and we would like to rectify that and to rebuild a trail connecting those two areas. Ian's been working very hard on the issue. He brought it to our commission and came up with some possible solutions. I know the town has been talking with the county. There was a meeting scheduled for today that had to be postponed and hopefully rescheduled to work on that regional trail between lines all the way to Hall Valley trailhead. So hopefully, you know, the ball is rolling on that. We wanted to bring it to your attention as well and see, you know, what we could do as the Parks and Rec Board to keep this issue moving.
Oh, and I'll just, you know, give you a little bit of background. My background, I've been working in trails pretty much my entire career. I started working on City of Boulder open space trails when I was 14 as a little junior ranger, picking out water bars, that's what they called me. And anyways, but I stayed there and then worked as a trails foreman and became, got into design, doing trail design for them, and now I work up at Rocky Mountain National Park. I did all the flood recovery trail design for them. So that's why I was surprised when I was over there and I saw the restoration work had been completed without reinstalling a trail. I just know that if you're putting in a trail that you need to do that first. That's like putting in the foundation of a house, and then you do the restoration. So it's unfortunate that we didn't have that in place at the outset, but and I'm encouraged by the town's response, Parks and Rec Commission response. There is, and I want to also point out that this is a citizen initiative. This isn't the town going we want a trail back there. This is citizens saying we want safe pedestrian access back to Old St. Vrain. Right now, there's a very narrow shoulder that pedestrians are using, and it's a very popular connection. A lot of people use it, and it's pretty unsafe when you think about the speeds on that stretch of Highway 7 and just that narrow shoulder. So there was a social trail, which is a trail developed by just use, that was a little off of the road. That was a little bit safer, but then the restoration work obliterated that. So now people are forced right up onto the road. So it's a pretty unsafe situation at the moment. Understanding that there's going to be some issues with CDOT, we looked at the Martin parcel as a potential solution for the short term. In Dr. Bob, there is a small trail in the draft, the latest draft that I have, which Dave Cosgrove provided me. It mentions a small trail connecting Bone Park to County Road 69 as a way to mitigate the social trails that are likely to occur there if there's no trails. And I can tell you as a trail designer, if you don't provide trails and you don't completely fence off access, which I'm assuming the town is not interested in fencing off that area, you will find social trails. You're going to find all sorts of recreationists using that corridor. So your best bet for restoration and to mitigate impacts to neighbors is to provide a design trail that hopefully is the easiest to maintain for the town, does the least amount of ecological damage, and also hopefully alleviates neighbor concerns. Part of that Martin parcel piece is to also look at the issue of parking occurring on County Road 69. There is a chance that that could become a trailhead, an informal trailhead. I can tell you my experience working for the city of Boulder. If you go up into the Table Mesa neighborhoods, you find little informal trailheads all over the place. And I completely can relate to neighbors not wanting that to happen on County Road 69. That's a rural road that needs to remain rural, in my opinion, low impact dirt road. We don't want to see a lot of cars out there. I think what we're trying to get is safe pedestrian access for pedestrians. So we're talking bikes, dog walkers, moms with strollers, low impact uses.
Again, addressing, it's unfortunate that this wasn't addressed when the river was rebuilt. And they put that steep slope in without rebuilding that.
I think it was presented that there was no option for the trail. It wasn't presented to us that there was any option to replace that trail. So I think the reason no one questioned it is because we were led to believe that there was no viable option for a trail in that piece. So,
And Dr. Bob was discussed by the entire board, and this piece in particular was discussed, and the community spoke.
And I was on the steering committee for Dr. Bopp, and I remember those conversations. And the issue is trying not to create a regional connection through Martin parcel, which I completely understand that sentiment. So what we're proposing is exactly in line with what Dr. Bopp mentions, which is a small trail, natural surface, 2 to 3 feet wide. I would recommend you not sign it, not even put a locals only sign on it, which it was in the draft that I read. That was one of the mitigations. But my experience is if you put any sign there, like we just put in a climbing route for an area in Rocky, and it said climbers only. Well, a lot of hikers are like, ooh, I want to go check out those views. So boom, all of a sudden it's becoming a major trail. So I would say even not a locals only sign, just keep it unsigned trail that connects to County Road 69 would be my recommendation at the outset. And that will just provide safe pedestrian access to Old St. Vrain until we can hopefully reestablish some regional connection, which I was encouraged to see the town making moves, contacting the county. Now we'll have to see with Paul's situation, and obviously that could push this back quite a bit, which is understandable. But the goal is to reestablish that regional connection. That's really the goal.
Are there questions? First off, on the board? Trustee Harrison?
I'm a little bit confused. When you say a trail to County Road 69, I thought that the objective was to keep a trail that connected to Old South St. Vrain Road.
The objective is to provide safe access to Old St. Vrain Road, and both in the short term and in the long term. So the short term, the best chance we have is to put in a trail in the Martin parcel once it's deeded over to the town. That has to happen before anything can happen there, obviously. Long term would be to reestablish the regional connection along Highway 7. But that is going to involve, it's going to be more involved to be able to put something like that in.
Yeah, there is a trail on the Martin parcel in the final version of Dr. Bott that I have. It's more of a loop, but it does show a small access to a regional trail where it says proposed regional trail. But I don't know if you've ever looked at the feasibility of the regional trail. So it does show a couple of access points. So I do believe that, you know, the door wasn't closed on the Martin parcel in terms of some sort of trail on the property. Not according to plan. It's in the plan. I mean, I'm looking at what I had as the final, and there is a map with a loop trail. Is that the one you're looking at?
Just a loop though. There was a lengthy discussion over this, lengthy, because, you know, I personally support walking through there too, but the neighborhood was adamantly opposed, and the one you adopted, we talked about fence, we talked about signage.
We need to bring the final then, because I don't have.
Well, the loop is the final.
Okay, but
Well,
it does show an access.
Yeah, and then the text, it actually specifically says a small trail connecting to County Road 69. And this is the copy I was given by Dave Cosgrove, so.
Well, that's what the intent is there's a loop, not to promote the access.
Agreed. I think the sentiment was very much, we don't want to draw people to the area.
We don't want it, it's not a regional
saying
connection.
that was absolutely kind of the idea, was that we don't want this to become a major traffic.
Right, and that's not our intent, but now we have no pedestrian access connecting town to South St. Vrain.
So, just out of curiosity, have we ever looked at the other side of Highway 7 for a trail?
You know, I don't think it's formally been looked at. I read the North Foothills 2 plan that Boulder County put out. I didn't see any mention of it. I mean, the issue is you'd have to do 2 crosswalks over a very busy stretch of highway, so it'd be questionable if that would be safer than, you know, keeping it on the side it is now. But that being said, that's another reason why the Martin parcel could be kind of a short-term solution for, you know, mainly for local folks who are using it anyways now, is that it's going to take some time to figure out how to reestablish that regional connection. And if a 2-foot wide single track is even appropriate for a regional connection, some people would say no. But where I'm coming at it kind of as a citizen advocate is even a 2-foot wide single track access is better than no access. It certainly would be safer than what's there now. You do have issues with people crossing on a regional trail, but you have great sight lines there so that conflicts would likely be minimized. In terms of the liability presented and handrails, I've never heard that before in my career. As a trail designer, that handrails would be required on a cross slope like that to prevent people falling over. I'd be more concerned about the issues with cars hitting, you know, accidents in that regard. So, but yeah, I hope did that answer your question?
I think so. I just want to make sure I was looking at it. It sounds like, I mean, I don't know if we have the final report, because were they still making?
On which one?
On Dr. Bott.
No, Dr. Bott was adopted.
So it was adopted, but I don't know that we ever saw the final product with all the changes from the meeting.
But I know there was a clause early in the Dr. Bott that is, you know, it was a kind of a flexible document as well. You know, depending on the needs, the finances of the town, how we were going to proceed with that. So, I mean, if there's other ways that we can provide a safe pedestrian access between those 2 points, you know, we'll look at that as well. You know, I don't know if, when the town does meet with the county for this regional trail, if it's something that they can provide safe crossings on Highway 7, then let's look at that as well.
I think all of it is within CDOT's right of way, more than the county. So we would need, they're gonna want it to meet their standard, and that's what they said they were unable to do when they were rebuilding the trail. Because, we wanted it back, of course, it was a major priority for us as well, but, it could not meet the grade that they required. So, we need to have the meeting, and I think it got rescheduled for, 2 weeks from today.
One other thing too is that, I mean, we are a recreation hub. Lyons, it's our economy is very, you know, dependent on it. It's very likely that, if we put a trail there or not, people are gonna continue using it, people will start using Martin Parcel. And so conflicts could occur, bigger conflicts could occur if the town does not take action to formalize a route. And that's just my experience, working through City of Boulder Open Space. There's a real desire among a lot of people to recreate in this area, and efforts to curb that or try to restrict trail access never ends well in my experience. It's always best to work with neighbors and get access provided in a way that hopefully meets everyone's needs. So that's really our goal, is to really hopefully alleviate some of the concerns from the neighbors, but also provide connection that can help the whole community gain access to that really key part of our region, which is the southwest section of Old St. Vrain and Heil and Hall Ranch. And
let me just ask the board, I guess, what's the board's interest in having the Parks and Rec work on this one?
Thank you. I'm very interested in having Parks work on this. I think trail connectivity is really important. It's a shame that we lost a safe connection to that side of the region. Rather than rehashing the past as far as of how that happened, I think it's just important for us to find a positive way forward. I think one of the most important points that's being made right now by Ian is that people create trails on their own. They're really good at it. All you have to do is walk around or bike around Boulder County. Look at Chautauqua. It looks like an ant farm there. All these social trails that absolutely don't belong, because people just walk wherever they want. You can even, our town, people have been really adept at creating so-called social trails that cross private property, and then when the private property owner asserts their rights, people feel as if they're entitled to that trail anyway. So even when trails cross private property, people feel entitled to that trail. So we're not going to stop people from making trails unless you establish a trail. That's the best way to keep people going in the direction you want them to go. Otherwise, I think there'll be more conflict, because people will just go wherever they can. And I would agree that it's a pretty unsafe situation right now. Connecting town to that region is important to do. So I would support this work. I think the concerns of residents there are valid concerns, and whatever reviews need to happen, then it should happen. I think we need to create some safe connections though.
I would concur. I think there's going to be a social trail there anyways. But I think if we don't put a trail in, it's going to cross over private property. Because the private property line comes fairly close to the river down there. And if we put in a trail, we could go around that property and hit County Road 69 instead of people just going on their driveway. But I think there's going to be trails down there. I always did, even when we had the last review with Dr. Bob.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of safer And even though the safer may not be perfect, it's safer. And I actually like moving forward with a 2-foot wide trail soon, and rather than messing as much with the Mark property. Although I like the loop trail in the Mark property, I think that would be a nice place to take a walk.
Anybody disagree, I guess, start, okay.
All for all the reasons I said.
Yeah, I guess the other question I had is, I don't know, you don't have to answer this tonight, but I guess then we start to get into if there's support for it and buy-in for it, what's the cost and how do you do it? So, if you come back with a proposal, you can kind of present some ideas about how much funding is required, and what permits and approvals and, who permissions are we gonna need, and, I completely agree. I mean, I think that section, it's inevitable, people are going to migrate up there, especially as we start charging more for parking everywhere. People are gonna look for ways to get around our parking costs, and that's just reality. We have many spaces in Bowen Park, but as soon as you put up a parking kiosk, it drives people to look for other alternatives. They want to stay longer and don't want to pay. So I think this is being proactive, in my opinion. Certainly, everything will have to be vetted through a very public process, but this is what Park does and does well. So I think you're getting direction to look at options and see what's available.
My one question, I guess, for Doug as chair of the Parks Board, Ian's not on the Parks Board, so he just brought this forward as a private citizen. How might we be able to keep Ian closely involved with this project, keeping his, due to his expertise, and just also knowing what we're likely to get the best product possible with, I think, someone of Ian's background.
And knowing Ian, I don't think we have to try.
That I believe. I guess it would perhaps be good if there were board support for Ian's involvement, so therefore there was no real question whether or not that Parks Department could tap his expertise in an official capacity of some kind or another. So I would support that as part of our direction to Parks, is that Ian is kept close and involved in this, if he would choose to accept.
Do you choose that? Sure. Happy to help. And really happy to help with the neighbors too. I mean, I completely understand that these are changes coming. Bowen Park is going to inevitably change the character of the whole neighborhood. I would be freaked out if my rural street was going to change due to some big developments happening. And so I'm really hoping we can come to a good common understanding where we can provide some level of pedestrian access, safe access, and alleviate some of the concerns from neighbors. That's the true hope.
All right, I'm gonna thank you very much for bringing us forward and for the work. We look forward to hearing your
Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. All right, next we're on to our ordinances and public hearings. Will the clerk please introduce the first item?
This will be a public hearing, resolution 2018-35, a resolution approving a non-exclusive cable television franchise agreement between the town of Lyons and Lyons Communications LLC.
All right, is there any brief staff reports?
There is. As you know, the town has been working closely with Ken Fellman, who is, by all accounts, and I mean all, the expert for cable communications law in this state and in others maybe. But he's not here tonight. He's available for questions should we need him. I worked and coordinated with him to ensure that the town negotiated with Lyons Communication at this board's direction a franchise agreement, technically considered a renewal under federal law because he has, Mr. Jones of Lyons Communication, his firm has been providing cable to this town and has proposed a franchise agreement that's appears to meet the cable needs of the community that it serves. And this cable agreement is a little bit different than the one that was previously in place, but it does continue to require that Lions Communications pay a quarterly fee, franchise fee of 3% of its gross revenues to the town, which the town may increase up to 5% upon 90 days written notice. And the major, we believe that both parties have come to agreement on all terms as directed by this body and as advised by staff, with one exception. And that is that this board asked that Lions Communications bear the cost of installing a connection here at Town Hall to broadcast a signal over the cable system, and Lions Communications declined to assume that cost. And since we had reached a bit of an impasse on that, we agreed to present this agreement without that particular requirement in there for this board's consideration. So that is sort of the only real outstanding issue that is in this agreement. But other than that policy issue, staff recommends that this franchise agreement be approved. And just by way of reference to an item that is further down on your agenda, coincident with this franchise agreement is the Lions Communications expressed a desire to continue leasing property from the town for its equipment. And that lease will be coterminous with this agreement. So it will last just as long as that. The agreement is right now designed for about 5 years, and unless terminated sooner in accordance with the terms of that agreement. And leases must be approved by ordinance if they're a year or more. So that is later on your agenda for that process as well. But it is, as I said, coterminous and part of this entire proposal.
And I'm gonna add just about our meeting that we, the town administrator and I met with Attorney Feldman and Mr. Jones to kind of try to work out the final kinks in the agreement that were holding us up from wrapping this up. It's been going on for quite a while. Just to elaborate on the one piece of this that we ended up not moving forward with, my understanding, and I won't get the technology totally correct, but there is a different way to stream our meetings to the channel than what was originally proposed in the agreement, which is kind of old technology. He's able to pick up our meetings off the internet and stream them to the channel. We didn't want to try to figure that out in this agreement, so the idea was that we would do some separate service agreement potentially with them to accommodate that need to try to get access to folks who don't have internet but have cable TV who want to watch a town channel. So there's some details there that can be worked out. They are not worked out, as the attorney said, in this particular agreement. But I think in the interest of trying to at least get the lease done and the cable franchise done so we can continue to operate, this is what we're proposing. So, and he's agreed, to my knowledge, to this agreement, unless you've heard differently.
Last I've heard is he and his consultant have reviewed this agreement, are completely in support of it.
Okay. So with that, I think we'll, if there are any questions from the board, and then we'll open up the public hearing. We have to have a public hearing on cable franchise agreements. So, hearing none, okay, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak to the cable franchise agreement, resolution 2018-35?
Yes.
Yes. No. Didn't think you'd have too many speakers.
Mark Browning, 633 First Avenue. I know that this seems to be in 2 parts, but I don't want to prejudge. Oh, sorry. On my phone. The second part, which I understand needs to be done by ordinance, is the lease agreement. Anytime I see a lease agreement as a private citizen or anything, leasing what could be valuable public property for no consideration, that raises something on my radar screen. And I understand the proposed 5-year lease of the property the whole water tank sits on is for $0, no payment to the town. Even though it's terminable under the terms of the agreement, if you read the agreement carefully, the town really has no way to terminate that within 5 years unless the lessee violates the agreement and fails to cure its violation. One of the things that I think the town should do, and it's been talked about for a number of years, is look at what value may exist in its surplus properties. 3 examples would be the Triangle lot, the water tank property, and the property out on Apple Valley Road was the old treatment plant. Those produce no tax revenue to the town, and insurance costs to the town. If at any time the town was able to realize value from those properties by listing them for sale and perhaps seeing what their value is in the open market, I think that would be a good idea. This would preclude the town from doing that, this lease that's coming up, prevent the town from doing that for 5 years. I'm not sure that's a good move for the town. I don't know if any of you have been up on top of that property. It's about 6/10 of an acre. It has a beautiful 360-degree view of the town. Based on recent lot prices for lots that aren't anywhere near as valuable as that lot, I think it could be sold for a lot of money. It obviously has a big water tank on it. It could be that the cost of removing that water tank might exceed the value of the property, but I don't think the town will let them know that until the town basically lists it for sale and see what kinds of offers you get. I think that the lease component of this needs to be looked at much more carefully. It also lacks a provision that should the property be cleaned up at the end of the lease term, it doesn't hold the lessee liable for the damage. It just says the town can take whatever is there and dispose of it. It doesn't say the lessee has to, doesn't put down, there's no deposit required. The lessee's not required to pay any charges the town might incur for cleaning up the property. I think that's normal in a commercial lease. So although that's not on the agenda tonight, if this is being looked at as two parts of the same deal, then there's no public hearing on the second one. I think the town is to reserve that issue of whether that's a good lease, and that should not be presumed to be a part of the deal that's being approved tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may just comment, there will be a public hearing on that.
All right, anyone else who would like to speak on this? Okay, thank you. We'll close the public hearing and I'll turn it over. Actually, let's just ask for a motion, and then if we have any changes, we'll do them by a minute. Anyone like to propose a motion?
I move we approve resolution 2018-35.
I'll
Do
send
you
the
live
motion.
in that house?
All right, any further discussion?
Are you there now?
Yeah.
Finally.
Are you not, I got Trustee Caravis. Go ahead.
You were saying when your discussion with him that through better technologies, he can stream it and we have to do another agreement. How long do you anticipate that taking? Because this one, just to renew what he was already doing, took us a year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Kind of just.
I can't answer
Okay.
exactly how long it could take. I think it depends on the level of services and how much work is involved and how, I think the other thing to consider here is we're talking a really small number of customers being served by its cable business. His primary business is the internet services, so the cable franchise is really primarily serving a very small number of elderly folks in town at a pretty low cost, which is the other thing. And he does have a town channel currently, is my understanding, that he streams our meetings for that channel. The question is really he would prefer the town, if we have a town channel, the town manage the content on that channel. So the question will be is, do we want to take on that amount of work to provide that? You know, the only thing we're not getting is, you know, and I don't have the technology down, but there's a drop or a connection to do it via cable, you know, and then we would have our camera feeding into that instead of going over the internet. So I think that, you know, when we sat down with him, you know, had this discussion, honestly, there wasn't much that needed to be dealt with in terms of the negotiation. We were really there for the most part. I think aside a few reworkings of some of the technical language, it was actually pretty confusing, so we just tried to simplify it a little bit. And I think Mr. Feldman did a really nice job, and Mr. Jones brought some consultant help with him as well. And I think the conversation went really well. I think, you know, to the board's concern that we would lose cable access for those citizens was really the primary reason to do this. We honestly spent a lot of time and money on this agreement, and I think that if we do want to do a services agreement, it should be something we can do that's more of a service agreement and not a technical cable franchise. It shouldn't be this sophisticated, I guess is what I'm saying. This has to comply with a lot of federal complicated laws. So the goal is we now have an agreement that is compliant, allows them to continue to serve those customers, and then we have options available if we want to expand what we run on the town channel. So that's kind of my answer.
That's all, just, thank you.
Anything else? Staff have any other comments or questions? No? Okay, call for the vote on resolution 2018-35. And it passes 7-0. Thank you. The clerk introduce the next item, please.
Ordinance 1036, an ordinance rezoning certain property in the town of Lyon from low-density residential R1 to medium-high residential zone, District R2A, on 109 Park Street.
Briefly, this is property, and your staff memo covers this if you've already had the chance to review it, so apologize if I'm being repetitive, but this property had 2 residential structures on it, 109 Park prior to the flood in 2013, and I think 1 was destroyed, correct? And then,
Not substantial.
but the property owner wanted to rebuild, but the damage to at least one of the structures meant that it could not be rebuilt because it was non-conforming. It's in an R1 zone. Should have started with that, sorry. So technically non-conforming with 2 residential structures on there. Couldn't rebuild the extra one, not extra one, but existing second one. And the owner wants to rezone it to R2A, which is a medium-high density, and it's my understanding that there are other R2A zoned properties in this vicinity. In addition to that, this rezoning application has met the criteria in the zoning code, which is, or one of the criteria required to approve a rezoning such as this, which is that the area requested for rezoning has changed or is changing to such a degree that it's in the public interest to encourage development of the area. And as your resolution states, staff feels that this rezoning as proposed will be consistent with the goals and policies of the comp plan. And PCDC has also voted to recommend to the BOT, to this board, that you approve this ordinance.
All right, we also have the applicant here, so I'd like to invite Scott Young to come up. If you want to make any presentation, you're welcome to do so now.
I don't really have
You
a
don't have to, but
I don't really have a presentation. I can answer questions, and any final questions. I think it's been pretty hashed through. But do you want me to?
Nope. If you don't have anything, we'll
I
do
can
a
just
public
give it from
hearing,
here.
and we'll see how things go. How's that? Okay, any questions from the board before we open the public hearing? Seeing none, we'll open public hearing. If you'd like to speak to ordinance 1036 regarding this rezoning, you come forward now, give your name and address for the record.
We have one written comment.
We did have a, do you want
Would
to
you
go
like to
ahead
read
and,
it?
you can, I mean, I guess we could read it into the record. We often make sure it's part of the record. But.
Yeah, I mean,
She's got my computer, I copied it and
Oh,
sorry.
This was comment submitted by Caleb Roberts. It says, "Dear Mayor and Trustees, in my view, a zone change is the wrong tool for solving this problem and introduces significant negative side effects. Number 1, the R1 zone permits an ADU, but requires that the owner occupy one of the structures. Isn't it true that R2A permits 2 dwellings on the property to both be rentals, neither occupied by the owner? The BOT has recently adopted a new policy for ADUs in residential zones. With these changes, the BOT has affirmed that it is of benefit to the public that owners must live at a property that has an ADU and that is required for R1 ADUs. This proposal seems to undermine the intent of the recent ADU regulations. Number two, this proposed zone change further establishes that changing zones is a preferred option for solving problems, and it is okay to proceed indefinitely making zone changes without amending the comp plan. The PCDC's recommendation includes dubious justification from the comp plan and the municipal code. Yes, the property has changed significantly due to the flood, but it was not the flood that caused the structure to be non-conforming. I hope to learn the PCDC's justification for their statement that quote, "The rezoning will be consistent with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan," unquote. Of course, we want to see the flood displaced residents can return to live at their homes. It's not clear why introducing medium high density zoning in an R1 neighborhood is in the public interest or meets the goals of the comp plan. Maybe a solution could be obtained by applying for a variance from the Board of Adjustments. Perhaps the neighbors of this property uniformly support changing their neighborhood to medium high density. But I'm concerned about this new high rate of rezoning of residential property. This session of the BOT has changed zones more than a generation prior. You could apply the same criteria in this case to 423 Reese Street and 418 Reese Street, and I'm sure numerous others around town. These are properties that have non-conforming ADUs, and there's been flood damage in recent years. This would be making steps towards transforming single-family residential zones into multifamily residential zones. Perhaps some feel that the older neighborhoods no longer need to enjoy the same right of secure zoning as the new neighborhoods. It just seems that you should be able to permit this family to build their ADU without taking such a drastic step as changing the zone. Then we can maintain that the owner will live in one of the buildings consistent with the rest of R1 properties in town. Thanks, Caleb Roberts, 141 Kelly Drive.
Alright, anyone else for the public hearing? Okay, close the public hearing, I'll open up to the board for discussion. Anyone like to begin? Alright, actually, I might go back to staff for a second. Do you want to maybe address why Board of Adjustments is not an option for this person?
Yeah.
For rezoning?
No.
Why is it going through rezoning versus going to the Board of Adjustments?
I wasn't, I mean, I can take a minute and take a look at that, but, you meant variance?
Yes.
Correct.
Well, that would be a different use, right? I mean, seeking, that's a use variance, and use variances are not favored and certainly not permitted under your code, so the rezoning is the option, as I understand.
I don't have all the specifics, but my understanding was this was the only option to
Right.
rebuild this particular property. I think other options were explored, and I can, we don't have to go into great detail probably, but I do think it's important to recognize that those other options were explored before the owner decided to pursue rezoning, which is a more onerous.
This is another
process.
project that has been
Absolutely.
trying to develop solutions for it for several years, many years, more than, yeah. And it is now adjacent to an R2 zone, and the new Habitat for Humanity homes is directly across the street, which will be a little higher density housing as well. So I believe the Planning Commission felt that this would not be particularly spot zoning, as it's adjacent. It wouldn't be like putting an R2 solely in the middle of an R1, so.
And Trustee Miller?
So this is 109 Park Street, not 109 and a half, correct?
Both.
It's, both are on the same
Okay,
parcel.
so you want to rebuild both of them?
No, just
109 and 109 and a half were both built at the same time in 1962 as single-family dwellings.
Right. Mr. Young,
I'm sorry, yes, okay.
It's easier to
Breaking
answer
protocol, sorry.
You're gonna get questions.
Scott Young, 67 Jasper Drive. To your question, both structures were built as single-family dwellings in 1962 in an R1 zone. And I think at that time, it was, nobody really cared. I mean, the town sells utilities to it. Excel sells utilities to it. So, but after the flood, the back property was damaged. They considered it substantial, but they didn't understand that what was really damaged was kind of a shed that's adjacent to the building. It's a block building. It's kind of hard to destroy. Did I answer? So what I want to do is I want to repair that back building, which is to make a dwelling on a second floor dwelling as opposed to a first floor dwelling that's 8-9 feet out of the floodplain, and resume renting it, which is what it's been. It's been a rental property for as long as I've known of it.
Right, so.
So it's not like it's changing any use really.
Both units are rentals though, is my question.
Yes, they're both rentals. Yes, I do not live.
Any other questions, trustee Kerr?
I just got a question as far as taps go and so forth. You know, are there two taps right now too?
There are two
So
taps.
there's paying two separate utility bills on
I pay
water and sewer?
utility bills on that 109.5 for water and sewer and electric.
And on the other one also?
Yes,
Separate
those,
bill?
there are separate bills, separate accounts, yes, always have been.
Okay.
As, in my knowledge, always have been.
So as far as town goes, if it gets zoned R2, nothing would change as far as utilities go? You know, because generally R2s, I think we charge for the second tap, but if we're already doing that.
I don't know that, I haven't looked at the utility accounts lately, so I don't know that, but if indeed that's correct, that's accurate.
When Sarah Snell was here, she looked in the records and saw there was a 3/4 inch tap for that unit, for that property. So that's what I know.
And the other thing, you know, is what does that mean as far as, you know, expanding or enlarging the building? I guess since it's in the floodplain, gonna be in the floodway, it can't get more than the existing
You have to
footprint?
keep it in the same footprint.
Same footprint.
So we don't have to worry about an explosion
No
of
rise.
development there?
No, it has to, it'll just be a second story above what's current.
And technically, those are two separate sets of analysis. What's before you tonight is just the analysis of the zoning, obviously a legitimate question, but just for purposes of your decision-making tonight, you're looking at the criteria that's set forth in the municipal code on rezoning.
Any other questions or discussion?
Just a comment.
Go ahead, trustee
You know,
Dorsey.
there's no shortage of rental spaces in this town. I mean, there's a huge shortage of rental spaces in this town, and so I'm in support of adding rental properties unless there's an overriding objection to that. I personally don't really do.
I guess I would just also like to comment on the concern, you know, the criteria really is, does it meet the comp plan? And I think it does meet our current comp plan. It meets also our housing rules. You know, I don't think it's inconsistent, and I don't believe that rezoning happens when people ask for rezoning. So the fact that we have been rezoning is a reflection, I think, of the changes in our community and in the environment because of the flood. A lot of people have had to repurpose their properties, and they've asked the board and gone through that process. And so I don't see this as anything inconsistent with how the process is supposed to work. And I think, you know, again, we have the Habitat homes right across the street, catty corner to this property, which are gonna be more dense. It's on the highway, essentially, so it's not really, you know, I don't see that rezoning this to a higher density is gonna have a major impact on this street or this neighborhood. I think things do evolve over time, and this is evolving to be slightly more dense. I also think higher density is consistent with sustainability goals. Rather than sprawling and building on open space and extending our borders. And so I think there are a lot of reasons to support this, and I will support this reasoning.
May I comment?
Sure.
Since, as far as changing the use of the area or changing the complexion of the area, there are rentals on all sides of that property. And really, I think that rezoning is really just a validation of what has existed since 1962 and bringing it into line with the realities.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion for ordinance 1036?
I'll move to approve ordinance 1036, an ordinance rezoning certain property in the town of Lyons from low-density residential R1 to medium-high residential R2A.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All right, it passes 7-0. Thank you. All right, thank you. Will the clerk please read the next item into the record?
Ordinance 1032, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, amending section 1-4-20 of the Lyons Municipal Code related to general penalty for violation.
Is there any presentation?
Yes, members of the board, this is the first in a series of 4 ordinances that was brought forward as a result of conversations between the town prosecutor and the municipal judge that came out of changes to state law several years ago that increased the maximum penalty for infractions of the town code. This particular one is, this particular ordinance is amending a section of your code that provides a general penalty for $1,000, and it increases the maximum of that penalty to $2,650, which is exactly in line with what state law has permitted for 3 or 4 years now. You do have in your packet a letter from the presiding judge for the town that explains that in general, and it talks about that in the opinion of the judge, most municipalities have adopted ordinances that increase the maximum penalty consistent with the statutory change, and that the proposed costs are, in some of these other ordinances that we'll talk about tonight, are in line with what is common in other municipal courts. And she actually opines lower than she has seen in some courts. So you have that additional background for your reference in this decision-making process. But this particular ordinance, 1032, specifically references one section of the code on general penalties.
All right, any questions for staff? Hearing none, I'll open the public hearing on ordinance 1032. Would anyone like to speak to this ordinance? Hearing none, we'll close public hearing. Is there a motion for ordinance 1032?
I move that we approve ordinance 1032.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. Passes 7-0. Next item.
Ordinance 1033, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, amending section 2-6-270 of the Lyons Municipal Code related to penalties for non-civil traffic offenses.
Brief presentation by staff involves what I just said, but it's for traffic penalties, non-civil traffic offenses, and just upping the amount possible fine from $1,000 to $2,650.
Any questions on this ordinance? Hearing none, we'll open a public hearing for ordinance 1033. Would anyone like to speak on this ordinance? Crowd is thinning, but chances are getting slimmer and slimmer. We'll close the public hearing on ordinance 1033. Is there a motion?
I move we approve ordinance 1033.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote on ordinance 1033. It passes 7-0. Next item, please.
Ordinance 1034, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, amending section 1-4-30 of the Lyons Municipal Code related to application of penalties to juveniles.
And this is akin to the general penalty provision revised by ordinance 1033 or 1032 that we just heard. But it is, your code has a idiosyncrasy that it separates penalties out for juveniles, and this is just the same rectification as the general penalty, but for juveniles.
Fortunately, not the only idiosyncrasy in our code. But, all right, any questions on this ordinance?
Just, I had a brain cramp, I think, while I was reading it. So there's really 2 levels for the juvenile, the first offense and then.
Yes, and there was a lower amount for one. You didn't have a brain cramp, Trustee Judge said that there was a lower level amount for. Refresh my memory. For persons who were at least 10 years but not yet 18 and who subsequently convicted, maybe conflicted too, of 1,000, and then subsequent convictions up to 2,650. There was a lower level with that same sort of step, and the prosecutor recommended keeping the step up, but going up to the maximum on the ultimate penalty. Yeah.
Well, what does subsequent mean?
Subsequently convicted of or pleads to a violation of any provision in this code classified as criminal.
So it'd be the second time they get.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
No brain cramp, but yeah, that was on recommendation of the prosecutor that there be a differential.
Any other questions? All right, we'll open the public hearing on ordinance 1034. I'd like to speak on this ordinance. Hearing none, close the public hearing. Is there a motion for ordinance 1034?
I move to pass ordinance 1034.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah,
Mayor
I'm gonna vote no. I can support raising to the state minimum for adults. I just can't abide doing it for juveniles. I understand that's for their second offense and there's tiers, but if they're a problem, they'll get fined when they're an adult. And this is where I'm just gonna vote no and
Just out of clarification, the average fine seemed that it was more pretty low. Did we, from my reading the memo, was I understanding it correctly that the average fine is around $25, $30?
That is the,
That's before cost.
that's for cost.
Do we know what the average fine is for juveniles? Roughly?
To be quite honest, our judge is pretty good with the juveniles. And we've had, kids who come in who don't have the means to pay, that come and do community service for minimum wage and get their fine paid. Which is really good, I think.
Trustee Garcia?
I would just to confirm that it will be relatively rare that the 2,650.
That is something really that needs to be that. And normally, really, when something like that happens, it's really that we see some of those younger kids a couple times, which isn't a lot in town. The kids in town are actually really pretty good. I'll ride them into Boulder County because the town is not, we can't deal with that. So, well, if it's that bad, they go to Boulder County.
Yeah, I'm sure those are all valid points. I would add, we're not voting specifically for the prosecutor we have, who sounds fantastic.
Right, and we may
This is
not have
about
her next
something
time.
else.
Right.
And so I'd say that the more we charge people for offenses, regardless if they're able to work it off in some way or another, the more burden this is on our impoverished residents. And essentially, fines penalize them more than people who are of means. And so to extend this to juveniles and creating an extra burden on families is just, I think, is just one road too far for me. And I don't think I'm completely alone on this. It's not as if this flew through the Colorado Senate, Congress unopposed. So, and I just have issues with raising fines on juveniles that would impact their families, impact their ability to pay it back. And I have no doubt our prosecutor's fantastic, but that's not what we're voting on. How wonderful our prosecutor or our judge.
Any other comments? Is there anything from staff, or, I'm sorry, you're good, okay. All right, I think if we're done, we'll call for the vote. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna join the mayor pro tem, I think he makes a good point. It does pass 4-3. Thank you. Final ordinance, 1035.
An ordinance of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, amending section 1-4-50 of the Lyons Municipal Code related to municipal court costs.
And this one's slightly different, although on the same theme as the prior three in terms of some changes that are recommended by the prosecutor and the municipal judge in line with changes that occurred in statute, including a new requirement, or relatively new requirement for courts to seal certain criminal justice records, and that sets a fee for that at $65, so it would just generally be recouping that cost in line with other municipalities and with state statute. And I think there's a traffic accident fee that is new, in addition to the existing fees. But the other fees, I think there's an increase of $5 in the entry of plea of guilty or nolo contendere or finding of guilt or liability, and the other fees are not changing in this. So it's mostly to recoup some additional costs that the court bears and that the town bears to fulfill obligations under statute.
Any questions for staff? Okay, hearing none, we'll open the public hearing on ordinance 1035. Would anyone like to speak to this ordinance? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and go ahead and ask for a motion for ordinance 1035.
I'll move we approve ordinance 1035.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? Nope, nope. All right, I will call for the vote on ordinance 1035. Passes 7-0, thank you. Would the clerk please read the items on the consent agenda into the record?
Resolution 2018-36, awarding the bid to and approving a contract with Help for Construction LLC for the demolition of structures located at 329 Fifth Avenue in Lyons. The first reading of ordinance 1037, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a lease of certain town-owned property to Lyons Communications LLC and repealing section 6-5-10 of the Lyons Municipal Code concerning cable television permit regulations. The April 2018 accounts payable and the March 12, 2018 special Board of Trustees meeting minutes.
Great, would anyone like to pull any items from consent? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. It passes 7-0. We're on to general business. First item.
So members of the board, pursuant to your direction at the March 12th meeting, when you approved the proposal of Summit Housing or accepted their proposal, staff has worked with Summit to negotiate a memorandum of agreement with Summit Housing Group, Inc. out of Missoula, Montana, based on the form memorandum of agreement that was attached to that initial resolution. And we have reached agreement on this version that is in your packet. I have received word from Rusty Snow of Summit Housing this morning, after a little bit of back and forth and some clarifications late last week, that they are in agreement with this. He sees no issues. FYI, he has passed it on to his attorney for some final review. Your resolution does authorize any final tweaks in conjunction with, or by the mayor in consultation with the town administrator and the town attorney to make any changes that do not increase the obligations of the town. I don't foresee any of those, but I just said that, and you know, we didn't. But I think we're all on the same page. This agreement really sets forth what Summit is expected to do and how the assignment process is going to work and get this affordable housing development underway.
Any questions for staff? Anything else to add? Trustee Wilson?
I had one question. In looking through it, I really couldn't see anything definitive in terms of the number of units that would be in the 30% AMI or 40% AMI range. Was there anything definitive? Is there any obligation on their part to at least explore that if it's financially feasible to?
Well, and it wasn't my I think there was some general direction given by the board, but in terms of what you would like to see, but I didn't hear any specific direction for an obligation to that. And I think it may depend a little bit on some things.
It does depend on the tax credit amount they're accepted into.
Yeah.
So that will be included in their tax credit application.
Okay, will we have opportunity for input into that and, you know, to try
That's a good
because I
question.
think it was the spirit of the board to
Sure,
at least
it
try
is.
to
Sure.
get as
Lower,
many
yeah.
of the lowers that
Yeah.
would be reasonable without tipping the whole thing into financial.
Yeah, and my recollection is that Mr. Snow was intending to align with that as well, but I don't know how they're gonna do that in terms of, you know, I think a couple things depend on if they're shooting for a 9% versus a 4% and how that's gonna work, but this board and part of their agreement is that the town will support the application for the financing, and so that is going to be where you're gonna have the opportunity to weigh in.
Yeah, if I recall, with the Habitat homes, there were development agreements and things like that with the developer that, where some of those details, I think, come into play around preference policy and things like that. And I think that's also if we are asked to commit any tap fees and things along those lines, the more agreements that we will have coming forward, so.
And that
I
is
think
one
there are
thing.
other opportunities where we can solidify the affordability.
They did specifically express that there might not be, but there might be a chance where they would be seeking waivers depending on what percentage financing they get. And right now, the agreement provides for any of those within the confines of the municipal code, which are basically the board's discretion.
Any other questions? I guess the only thing I highlighted in section 4.2, by including what we think the estimated cost might be, does that in any way limit how much we can recoup if they exceed that dollar amount? And is it really necessary to put that in there?
They need to put it in their application to CHAPA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they really wanted to know that, probably for that reason as well as just bottom line, what they would be expected to bear. We did some calculations that we think are leaving some room, but are fair and based on estimates of some research that we did and the earnest money that was paid so far for the purchase and sale agreement.
So are we then limited to $20,000 reimbursement if it exceeds that number for some reason?
No, it's just an estimate.
No, yeah, they wanted it for their budgeting for their application.
Okay, so we think we've got a number that shouldn't exceed.
We came up with a number and then added some contingencies.
Well, and the first sentence says that the developer shall reimburse.
Estimated to be.
Okay. All right, any further discussion?
My foot was asleep.
My only comment would just be, I know this is a mundane, it feels like a bit of a mundane act, but this is not. This is another step in reaching our housing goals, and I just think it's something to be celebrated. So I know it feels mundane and plain, and here we are with no public testimony. Fifth thing in a row or whatever, but just, I think it's a great thing. So,
I think we should make a motion.
I move that we approve resolution 2018-27, or 37, excuse me. I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? I agree with the mayor pro tem. Every step was exciting. All right, I'll call for the vote. All right, passes 7-0. Thank you. Could I actually have a motion to continue item number 2? I think that was a request of staff because we weren't really prepared to have that discussion.
Well, we did include the information from the previous presentation that Planner Glasgow had regarding the actual State Highway 66 planning. It's called the PEL, an environmental linkage study. And we also, at a staff level, did go through and made the adjustments that the board requested, prioritizing projects, putting more accurate descriptions, and putting an estimate. But Joe and I did our best to search Paul's files for that document, and we could not find it. So we are not prepared tonight, and so hopefully at our next meeting, we will be able to have that more detailed discussion about prioritizing projects and costs.
And I would ask we
In
continue
the
to
meantime,
May
there's
7th.
some leisurely reading for you.
May 7th, I think which should be the continuation date. We don't want to do this at the next meeting.
Oh, sure, May 7th, okay.
You need a motion?
Yes, please. That's on the agenda.
I move that we continue the TIP discussion and setting priorities to May 7th for trustees.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the votes. All right, and the item is continued, thank you. So I'll turn it over to staff for housing update.
Well, we have some housing updates for you to continue our journey forward. I'm going to start with the Van Court property. We did get the hypothetical appraisal back, and interestingly, it did not add any value to the property. And so I have that available electronically. I didn't put it in the packet, it's, an appraisal. So, I can pass that along to the board if you want to see it. So I guess, my next step on that was to notify, James Van Court of the results and, entertain if he's wanting to still talk with the town about selling it. That's my next plan there.
Can you just remind me, what the appraisal,
It
the
was,
appraisal amount was?
440,000.
440.
The second housing update that we want to talk a bit about tonight is the Lions Village East Thistle proposal. And the Greens has now presented a proposed purchase and sale agreement of that property that our attorneys are vetting to be able to present to the board to entertain. In the meantime, they amongst the three development partners have talked about a way to move forward the housing section of that, to be able to potentially still utilize any DR funds that Summit does not use. Although, and we also had a meeting with Chapa. They wanted to go to Chapa and present this location to them to see what their level of support would be, knowing it's not, you know, integrated in the community right now. And so we had a nice discussion with them on timing and tax credits. And the message that I kept hearing over and over about the 9% tax credits from the Chapa staff was that the biggest factor is going to be is the property under control. Meaning owned, zoned, and title commitment to it. So unless there is some really tremendous changes in the next couple of weeks, I really don't know how a 9% application can be ready out there. But they will be wanting to present to you probably once this purchase and sale agreement comes forward and give you some more specifics on that. I just want you to know we are talking with them. The letter of intent for 9% round is due May 1st, the official application June 1st. So that's Lions Village East proposal.
Sorry, can I, we had talked about doing a workshop for the new board on that. Do we have it scheduled?
I don't believe we do, because there's not a workshop on the 16th. We would have to either, I don't think May 7th is taken
First
yet.
meeting in May?
I don't think it was in there.
That, or is there is there 5 Mondays in April?
Yes.
So that's a possibility if people are interested. Do you want to start the new board that way? But
No, in April.
April.
April 30th, where's next one? All right, let's talk about how we
Okay.
get that scheduled.
Okay.
Okay.
And then on
The results of the election by then.
Just true. We don't have 6 people until we figure out the numbers.
And then on Lions Valley Park, the Summit Housing MOA was approved tonight. They have updated their conceptual drawings based on the input they heard from you, so I do have some of those I can pass out or send electronically to get some feedback. They were very responsive, and their architect met with, met with, I just have 8 right now, so I want to make more. Met with us immediately following your last board meeting and wanted to know what changes, you know, we would want to see in that development. So I think this is much more compatible with the houses in the neighborhood, with the visuals they presented. And then you'll have to even take a look at the layout, but they did try to align them with the single family lots across the street. You wanna see it? So we can pass some around to the public too. So anyway, those are updated conceptual, so if you have comments after you get a chance to look at those, there's little notes to the side. And it's my understanding that the geotechnical studies and the appraisal are underway. They are still hoping to pursue the 9% tax credit round with the letter of intent on May 1st and an application on June 1st. There has been some, maybe some new information provided regarding the zoning on this lot, and the attorney is going to present that portion.
There's not much to say, and that's okay. This is, I think the question was, well, the town zoning map from 2009 says this is R1. What does that mean for this property and project, and does it mean a rezoning needs to be sought? And ultimately, our conclusion is that the property is R1, subject to a planned residential development that was approved in, I think finally the date was February 1980. The application was filed in August of 1979. And that planned residential development does permit multifamily housing and density commensurate with that on this tract A. And so, in our opinion, that's, the zoning is R1, but it is subject to the PRD, and any further changes in the planned residential development, any further changes in the zoning code left in place all approvals that were in effect prior to the adoption of that code.
So that means the next step for Summit will not be a rezoning request in front of the Planning Commission. It would mean the submittal of a development plan for review by the Planning Commission. So I believe that
with the permission of the current property owner, with pending closing on the property.
There you go. And so it now makes it more feasible to get a 9% tax credit in place application.
That shaves probably, I mean, that was
30 to 60 days.
30 to 60 days off the process for them to take. Anybody have questions about that? So just to reiterate, so it does not have to go through rezoning.
You guys were talking and you
were paying attention. I'm like, that So you want to give the example of Lions Valley Village, a similar situation?
Sure.
I think you know more about that than I do.
Well, what has been discovered is that the property, although on our map it says, our current zoning map says R1, on the title commitments for for these tracts, it explicitly says that these are subject to a PRD, which is a term that was in the code in 1979.
Since 69, yeah.
69, 79. That was similar to what we would now call a planned unit development, but this was planned residential development specific for multifamily housing on those two tracts. Actually, it was 3 tracts. It was Lions Valley Village, what's currently the church across the street, and this tract A. And it says that these are to remain able to be zoned as multifamily, or developed as multifamily, despite R1 on the map.
Well, and the zoning code in 1969 specifically allowed PRDs as a use by special review under the R1 zoning code, so that's how that development attacked.
Right, so, and basically looking at how Lions Valley Village was built as multifamily without going through rezoning, it followed the same exact process.
We were, as staff, we were, looking for documents of how did that process work, because it is an R3 in an R1 zone. And there was no ordinance rezoning it. So we were really curious about how all of that worked. We contacted the developer and Mr. Bell. Both were very consistent in saying it's because these 3 tracts of land were subject to this planned residential development. The maps were attached, it was all consistent, stating that they could still be developed multifamily. And so we had the attorneys review the documentation, and they feel that it's staying.
So I think with that in mind, I think the concern we're going to hear is, okay, so what is the opportunity for public input?
Sure.
And the process. So
Sure.
obviously a development plan still goes through a PCDC process and has to be approved by the PCDC.
Correct.
But it does not come to the Board of Trustees, correct? I think it only goes to the PCDC at this point. my
I
understanding.
think that's correct.
We can clarify that, but I think what we need to do though is, I would like to hear from Summit what their plan is for some community outreach. Just to say, here's where we are, here's what the next steps need to be, here's when we think these steps will happen. I know they're still doing due diligence on the site, and we still have a lot of details to be worked out with the owner and purchase prices and things like that. But I still think, if there's new drawings, I think that seems like there's obviously a lot of new information that needs shared, so it'd be nice if they would kind of let us know what their plan is for doing some community meetings.
Then the architect that's working on this, Elizabeth Johnson or Jackson, her name's on your sheet, she will also be conducting the community input, and she's very interested and ready to get involved with that. So we will ask them for a plan.
All right, any other comments about Mayor Pro Tem?
It's about Lions Village East, is that?
Sure.
okay with you? Thank you. So first, great work with Track Day. I think that as kudos to staff for really digging deep into the properties and understanding and finding parallels between there and Lions Valley Village. So excellent work. So with Lions Village East, I guess I know there's nothing specific in front of us and there's no decisions to be made, but I think that I would express some concerns about the direction that it's going in, considering where we are with Track A. I think that the next board may want to consider going out to RFP again for the eastern, for that area. Really, commercial was the primary purpose there. And I think that if we're trying to put housing before the commercial, we could really impact the commercial development. And so just to give some thought to the idea that the decisions we made about the eastern corridor were before we were able to secure Tract A for affordable housing. So considering the fact that we have a nice clean pathway for Tract A, I think we can refocus the eastern corridor on commercial development, which is vital to the town's tax base.
I would just say that I agree with that. Originally, I was disappointed with the lack of response to the RFP for that area, so, I don't know, I do feel like we're working with one option, and we didn't really have much of a choice, so I'm just curious to see if there are other people out there that would want to look at it at this point. I don't want to go backwards either, but I feel kind of trapped there, I guess.
Yeah, anybody else?
Mike, I have a question. Are you looking at going out for redoing the RFP as a rewriting also with less emphasis on the housing and more emphasis on the commercial out there? Or just resend out what the RFP currently is or was developed by staff? That's just more of a curiosity question for me.
That's a really good question. I think that the primary focus out east ought to be commercial. And I think housing ought to be an extra benefit that we get out there. But I think that when we are so housing focused out east, it can really impact our ability to develop the eastern corridor for the important commercial aspect that it can benefit the town. And so, considering where we are with Tract A, it feels as if we don't need to put so much pressure on the eastern corridor to be part of our main piece of our housing solution. I think it would be something that complements the commercial development rather than something that is, I guess, that's the best way to put it, something that complements the commercial development.
You have a good point. Just back in Nebraska last week, speaking to some old friends in the construction business that do develop, and we're just bouncing on things out that we're doing out here. The commercial, a lot of people don't consider maybe mixing commercial residential a bad thing, but as soon as we touch into that light industrial, as some of us have talked about, artists who might be doing some welding, they say in their experiences, there's all of a sudden a big jump on, it is a concern, instead of just maybe being not. So Pro Tem had brought up a pretty good point that I didn't even think of until you just brought it up. So, meaning light industrial with housing, it can become more difficult than just basic commercial being some restaurants, some of this, or some retail stores, as opposed to.
Well, the other thing, I guess I agree to the point to say, I think the proposal we have hit a lot of values and things that are consistent with the community, but I leave myself wondering, are we really getting something that serves the community with it? But I agree also, the housing is less critical on our property that we're trying to move, especially, I think there's interest in other properties that would like to annex now, that have a little bit easier path to annexation because of the increased acreage, that they won't go to a vote. So I think that maybe those other parcels that don't have a highway frontage, with the annexation, we have a lot of ability to require some retention of affordable housing potentially on those parcels as part of any future development out there. So there might be some other tools in our toolbox with future annexations to accomplish our housing goals so that we can dedicate more of our property toward the commercial piece. I think the other, recently having more discussions about our LURA process as well, maybe slowing down has some benefits for that plan also. So giving us some more time to get a plan in place out there wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. I also do want to be sensitive to that this has put a lot of time and energy into this proposal. So I feel like, we at least probably owe them another chance to come back and make another presentation. At least I think this is going to the new board, so the new board should hear it and decide what's the best way to move forward. But I think this is, I'm sure it's something that we've all kind of like hesitated to say out loud, like, are we on the right track with this? I also wonder if we need some additional help. I mean, I think we got very little land for commercial development, and we need to get it right. And maybe we need some expertise to help us with what's the best way to recruit what we want and make sure we get a hotel if that's what we really think belongs on that south parcel. And if light industrial and workspaces is what there's a demand for, we need to understand our market. I get nervous when people who don't know Lyons very well have their vision, which is great, maybe it will work, and maybe it will be great. I think this is good discussion. Let's, Trustee Drysdale,
Well, I agree, halfway there is a great thing to celebrate. Still halfway there. Maybe not even quite halfway there, but I'm still in support of parallel development, housing and commercial. I definitely think we need commercial. I'm not downplaying that in any way, shape, or form. But to get, even if it's 10, 15, 20, 30, whatever can work still, and if it's because you can see another annexation coming that may be able to fulfill that housing, that's fine. But to me, I'm not in the, personally in the mood to slow down on that.
Okay. Great. Well, good discussion, and we're not making any decisions, so I think just for some feedback for staff, I guess.
Am I to share that with them so they can stop investing?
I don't know. I mean, I think let's schedule the workshop, because we will have a different board too, so.
Well, they want to put in the application along with Summit.
Well, I think they would need our support for an application, so I think the workshop is the next step, because ultimately the town has to sign a purchase and sale agreement. They have a couple hurdles to clear, so I think we need another workshop to see what else, how they've changed maybe their proposal in the meantime.
And I would just want to be very upfront with Division of Housing and CHAPA, because they kept hearing this gets us to our goal of 100. I mean, this is kind of backstepping a little bit.
I don't think I'm hearing housing is the problem. I think the concern is about the commercial piece. And that I can just say my reservation has always been a little bit with their commercial plan.
Oh, okay.
So I think initially we were still interested in what they had visions for housing. It was just how can we disconnect those two potentially. I know they didn't have it designed that way, but if there are other parcels that are being considered, let's see what might have changed since the last meeting.
And in the meantime, I think Kathy wants to look at if there's any breach.
Well, I haven't
No,
really
intent.
reviewed the RFP or the proposal in great detail, so I'm happy to review that, just to see if there's anything that we haven't thought about.
Yeah, I think they're just having met with them on Friday, or Thursday. I think they'll be really disappointed, but if we give them an opportunity, you know, it may also be worth giving them a consideration instead of going out for a full new RFP is, can you present us a different commercial plan with less emphasis on housing? You know, if that's what we're wanting to.
Well, I do think we do need to clarify with them that this board has not committed anything to that group. We have said we are interested enough from your initial proposal to continue discussions. And I think our direction with housing was, these are the best properties, let's move forward and see which one kind of surfaces to the top of the pile, has the best shot at falling for 9% tax credit. They did on the Bell parcel, kind of combined with their Eastern Corridor project, and weren't selected. So I think they're still at the phase of having to convince us that they have a viable project out there that we are interested in, both commercially or housing, or both in some way. So I think they have, I mean, in their RFP response, I thought they did conflate their position with the town slightly. So I do think we need to make sure we're really clear with them about where they stand. That would be my message to them, is that we're still interested in hearing what you have to propose, but we haven't signed any agreements. All we've done is give good, very general direction to staff. Unless anybody else has understood it differently, that's been my understanding of where we are.
Yeah, and I guess just to clarify where I am, I think I'm leaning more, you know, with Trustee Drystat, where it's not that I don't wanna see housing out there, I'd just like to see some different proposals for it that make more sense. And I agree with Trustee Greenberg in that, you know, that doesn't necessarily have to be the focus. And I don't even think we need to write a whole new RFP to get what I'm personally looking for anyway. I think it can be the same one. I just like to see some other options and not be pigeonholed into this one, I guess is where I am.
Okay. Anything else? Trustee Miller?
No, I like the, I mean, obviously I want the housing to continue, the housing piece. I think it's important to, you know, do that. But I do agree that commercial out there is important, more important now that we have some other options for affordable housing. And, yeah, I agree with what's been said. I think that, we could definitely look at some other commercial. If we went out for RFP, I don't know, it's backstabbing.
This business.
So hard.
I don't think it's backstabbing. I think that's, they're business people, and they sorry?
Backstepping, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
backstepping? I
Yeah.
thought you said we were backstabbing. I'm
No,
like,
backstepping,
I heard the
backstepping.
same.
Oh, okay.
Oh, did you, sorry, no,
That's okay, thanks for
backstepping.
All right. Okay, so I think that covers the housing update, unless there's anything else from staff.
I don't think so.
Okay, we have no items removed from consent, and we have, we want to go through just trustee reports, and then we'll have our executive session. Unless there's a summary of any action items. Anybody want to start? Trustee reports, Trustee Travis? Anything?
I left my notes at home, sorry. I will say, I'd like to congratulate Pro Tem Weinberg, Mr. Kerr, Trustee Kerr, 4 years after the flood, working, what you're working on, housing, public works buildings, parks, bridges, this or that, and a lot of it got done. Congratulations, you guys did.
6 years.
They're not done yet.
I
They
know,
have to show
I
up
know,
one more time,
but-
and one of them may have to stick around if we don't know who knows, I know. So,
And get appointed to the team.
They might find themselves appointed or something. I couldn't know.
I don't have anything to report. None of my commissions and committees have met, so I'll talk to you guys next time.
I have Human Services Meeting Commission tomorrow at 4 o'clock, 5:30. Here, no, actually not here, it's at the, across the street, at the depot, yeah, due to the election.
I'm sorry.
The last UDP meeting, talked about a couple of things. One was, we got, at the meeting before, we got a proposal to have a monitoring system on our substation. And it was gonna be fairly expensive, like $600 a month or something like that. But I think, we decided we wanted to hold off on anything, making decisions on something like that until after we got our, the new meters in town, that maybe we could, the new contractor for that would give us something for the substation also. The other thing we discussed was the wastewater BOD test results, and there was kind of some disappointment in the results. They seem to be kind of non-conclusive. There was a lot of this sounds, buts when we got into the details, like the lift station out at Stone Canyon, maybe a fermenting batch, that the wastewater treatment plant where we're actually having monitoring is actually after where we recycle flows back from the treatment plant. And I don't know the technical details, and so maybe what we need to do is move the sampling out, but then our permit says we have to monitor in the place where it's at. And there were some shows that some of the BOD examples, it showed that we had high concentrations at the plant, but we had not every single other inflow that we measured in town was lower than that concentration. So the question is, how could lower concentrations get concentrated at the plant? And so there's a lot of questions that we had. We encouraging, town staff to move forward on more BOD sampling. We think that's the way to go to try to resolve some of these issues that were identified. That's all I have.
Interesting. Okay. Trustee.
The PCDC is working on the, among other things, on the overlay districts in town, trying to make it a little more friendly to businesses, to do things that we would all feel okay about. And the Arts and Humanities Commission will be meeting with Larry Cohan in terms of his proposal relative to to a Lions Blood Memorial.
Is the PCDC planning on taking any input from EDC, or can we give them some input?
I think they would welcome input from the EDC.
Okay.
Thank you. So the library was pleased to hear that RTD and the EcoCycle and skate park are just kind of ready. And I would just ask staff to just keep those lines of communication open as the library has needs. I ask that they keep the skate park for as long as possible. They understand why. They understand there'll be a gap in service possibly. So, and they're sympathetic to that. I would also, so with that in mind, perhaps we could do a little bit of outreach so that someone who uses the current skate park doesn't just show up one day and there's barriers around it or something like that, that we could somehow figure out a way to communicate with this particular group of stakeholders and let them know so that they're not surprised and they know that something else is coming. So that
And I got an update today on the recycling. The site, right now, with all the list of things to be done with floodplain permits and permitting by the county, they're looking at the site to be developed by the end of May.
Great. That should meet their timeline nicely. And I think RTD is just ready whenever.
Just signage.
So, right, so.
And we probably need to do messaging there too.
Yes, and maybe put a sign up at the old, where the current one is to direct people down there. And so things are moving smoothly. They have, so they're doing great. And so that's C is just focus on what we've asked them to focus on. So getting ready for cleanup day. And I've gotten some information about satisfaction surveys and things like that I will pass along to the board so you can have that information for the future as you consider potential changes to the hauler ordinance, whether pay-as-you-throw, single hauler.
What's the date again? May 19th.
Right.
May 12th is
The
garage.
garage sale.
Right.
And I guess the cleanup, but the diversion.
Yeah, it's diversion day.
Yeah. That's it.
I don't have much from the meeting standpoint. I have several meetings this week. But I just wanted to say good luck to all the candidates who are running for re-election.
And to you.
Plus suspense for another concern. Also just wanted to say we're organizing a Win and Who Build Day in May for the town women on staff and board members who are interested, and we'll let the guys run town hall for a day, see how that goes.
Good luck. Is Joe still here? You may need volunteers from the board to help.
So if anybody's brave enough to sit in Victoria's office for a day. There are several meetings just with residents in last couple of weeks, but overall, we're preparing for new board orientation on Saturday, and just look forward to working with the new board, but, I'm gonna say my goodbyes next week to this board. This board, I'll just say, has been such a pleasure to work with and incredibly functional, highly functioning, productive, hardworking, all those things. So, being our last kind of real full meeting, I just want to thank everybody for all their hard work this term. It's been a lot of fun, it's been a lot of hard work, a lot of late nights, but I think we've accomplished a lot. So, I'm sorry for all the hard work, but not really sorry. So, thanks for everything. But, so next week, hopefully it'll be a fun 5:30 reception. Bring your families, 2 weeks, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And thanks staff for their hard work during this term as well. You guys have been fantastic to work with, and really also just ramped it up, and town attorney as well. So, but we have a long list for the new board. We're already making lists, and we will not be wasting any time getting busy. So enjoy your little mini break, those of you who come back. All right, with that,
I do have one other item.
Sorry.
I should have mentioned during my staff report, and that is, just today I just want to make sure you know that we're keeping lines of communication open with Longmont. So I met with the Longmont city manager today, and a couple of their key staff, and we actually had like 12 topics to discuss. So that was productive, and they offered whatever assistance they could help us with the wastewater plant. And regarding pretreatment, they've got a full staff of pretreatment experts that they said you know, if it would be helpful, so Joe will be meeting with them to look at, you know, policies, procedures, checklists, things we can help businesses with. So, that was nice of them. Also, if there was any assistance or support, they could write to CDPHE to get our new permit, so that we can get that line out east, before the funding runs out. So they're aware of those. We met regarding the Apple Valley relocation of that water line and how to best coordinate that, because they're putting their water line in at the same time. They still aren't going to be in the same trench, but they will be running parallel to each other under the road, and just coordinating timing and paving and signage and all of those things. And then we talked about the hauler option. I threw in there, is there any possibility of street sweeper options? We discussed, gosh, I didn't bring my list. We had a long list today of things. Oh, we talked a little bit about fiber, how that may potentially pan out after the election tomorrow, and next steps for that. We discussed, CDBG DR projects. There's a gap in funding for the outfall to go beyond Highland Ditch. Unless the bids come in good, there could be like up to a $50,000 gap there, so discussing an agreement on who's paying for that. So anyway, I just want to keep you in the loop that we had a very healthy, good discussion, and continued partnership with them, and they offered, you know, whatever resources could help us move forward with our recovery and our other plans. And they are looking forward to another compost route if they were to be selected to round out their schedule. So I was like, wow, that's probably one of our bigger needs. So we'll see. But anyway, just want to make sure you know we're communicating with them.
Great. All right, do you have a summary of any action items you need?
I think I marked down with you, make sure you have the final thing Dr. Bob. Did you put down more?
I have a couple. I have get out more information on the STRs, those questions. Richard will follow up on the path lighting for phase 2 at Bone Park. We'll continue on dimmers. Reschedule the county and CDOT meeting regarding the trail. We had to cancel. The service agreement with the cable franchise. A separate agreement. And schedule a workshop for the Greens on May 7th. And message stakeholders regarding RTD and SCAPE.
On the Dr. Bop, can you also get it on the website with our other planning documents?
Hopefully that is the one there, but I didn't double check.
I didn't see any.
Speaking of that, it was in our update today, in the staff report, his report. It still needs to, the final edits are done, it says that then it's gonna go to FEMA for its final approval.
So with FEMA probably.
FEMA's, is that pretty much, they just like rubber stamp it, they already know, or could they sit there and send it back with a bunch of marks on it?
That's the handbook, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah, I don't think that the Dr. plan will be, but the handbook.
Okay. Good,
Okay, and that's in Kathy's lunch.
All right, so I think we'll take a recess and come back for the executive session. So is there a motion to recess?
I move we have a 5-minute recess.
I'll second that.
Shouldn't they say they're gonna
Vote against it.
Is there a second?
Not if they, because I need to change this under.
Alright, 10 minutes, good.
Well,
All in favor?
have to
All right.
and act like
Well, that's what I'm saying, you know, in order to get all of them, it's gonna take a long time to do all that.
People think it's indefinite.
So let's,
Yeah, so I'll
change this over to just a painting or something.
Or can you just unplug it?
No, because we have to plug it back in and say we're going into
Oh, yeah.
My wife found
And I'm gonna be out of town this Thursday, Friday. Okay. Remember, just a quick reminder.
Watch this, I'm gonna pan.
Around back, around for sure.
Jeff, is there a way to mute?
Saturday meeting?
Oh, just because it's during the recess. I forgot to bring the stuff from Brown.
Oh, that's a.
I found some more, I found my sticker book.
Oh, you did? Yay, yeah.
There's another thing that was like.
Oh, yeah. No, they just mentioned it. No.
Okay.
So.
Yes.
If anybody would like to during the break, I have to stack all the chairs for the lecture room. No, we can't.
The overlay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would talk specifically, like you said,
Just these last couple of breaks. I know, so I was like, okay, Victoria, you're gonna have to get that ready. You don't need to go back to it. And then we're gonna let it or whatever.
My boat was asleep.
Oh, that was.
I almost fell over.
Anyway, but I don't know how
It just said if we make a
corner over here, so I think I can.
She just wants to put the two polling stations over there.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. I can take that one later. Take it.
Yeah, so that's where.
And my views on March too, because nobody's on it. Oh, yeah. Nothing makes it do regular.
What question? What question do you have?
What ordinance they and Mark has, because I know most of the ones we discussed. So, and I were.
Good luck tomorrow. So say good luck to all of you.
Oh, they're not gonna stand there. Oh, you prefer to. These guys are big things. I'll get it here.
Come on, Kim, so I gotta talk to you.
What's up, Nick?
I gotta talk to you.
I gotta get on the road, my friend.
They'll just have to.
Yes, sir.
I gathered that. Just because of the person, because nobody could give me a.
Those are policy decisions. You know that.
But the point of
We've counted everything we have, so it all depends on what comes in, what came in today, and,
it also allows, like I said, that we could have no change. And that we could also, which I believe is the case, which he said it wasn't, that there was only 2 years.
then I think so. It's the, checking the
On 2-year terms.
for a break.
Yes.
I'll kind of let you know, when
I think it exists right now.
but they're gonna come in.
Because at the same time that we changed the terms from 4 years to 2 years,
And they're
it
gonna
would have
start.
made sense at that same time to
So-
change, or leave.
I'll email you guys. And then I'll send it to either Ariel or Kim, and, cause that one page where they put that up, I checked on that page, and I put that.
Just the capability to be able to.
And then we'll hope that number, once we have extra.
4 years, so we could change that real easy. But this was the interesting thing. This was the interesting thing.
So 15 votes would be.
Nowhere.
15, I could have said 15 or 50.
It's for some double signature.
Right, or people who didn't sign
But
it.
that had to
And if
be.
they didn't sign it,
Every one of those options.
yeah, and if you have to start with all with the Smart 28.
Send them a letter.
You send them a letter and tell them if you didn't sign it or their signature doesn't match.
So if you
That
ever,
second reading.
I don't know, as a homeowner, I about to figure that out. Or I guess
9 days.
You'll know on the 9th.
So Dan gets an extra 9 days.
So I did not, so I did not bring that up. I did not bring that up.
He's thrilled.
So that's my wife.
I mean, there could be additional, there might have not been the
Yeah. So when you go into, and there are people only to look at signatures, you can't get.
It also gives
So you will,
the
you
board
get
the
3
capability
signatures
to.
that on each person's stuff to change. And if it doesn't match the one on the back of the ballot, it gets set up inside. Yeah, and we'll call. We will.
I follow the direction of my client.
Can you see the initial returns?
I think, you know,
You've got 200.
but see,
Can
the
anybody get
counties,
access to
the
those
counties have
meetings?
already been doing this. The municipalities have just.
That was kind of the.
So you don't even open the envelope?
Don't even open
Because it was
it.
a second reading.
So we send them this letter and they sign it, come in and sign that letter, or sign
Thanks
it
for,
and send it back.
bringing it
And
up.
if it matches, send counties.
I can see people don't even think about that. I can see some
Well, and then when there's lines that we have, and you know what happened. And it's, I got yours, you got mine.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
You got,
Oh, yeah.
we've got Dan and I.
I don't think it's done that, but I can see they come by. I can see, it's just the election, some group deliberately not signing the ballots, or all holding their actual ballots until after the election. You can see some people are taking
But I kind of didn't put that line. Yeah, it'll, I mean, it's fine, there's nothing that we can. A couple of us take, a couple of us out.
Now I'm gonna go look though in my mailbox.
All right.
I know, right now I'm all nervous. All right.
I'm just glad, no, it's okay, I'm glad we didn't trip.
Are these here for a reason? Are these here for a reason?
No, but you go ahead and sit down up here. You have to vote.
Close the window right there.
Connie, do you want this window closed?
Yeah, please, yes.
Why?
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So you'll have to turn this on.
Okay, it's April 2nd, 2018. The time is now 9:47 p.m. For the record, I'm Mayor Connie Sullivan, as required by the Open Meetings Law. This executive session is being electronically recorded. Also present at this executive session are the following persons. Mayor Connie Sullivan, sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Otherwise, we might not.
I'm like,
I know, right? I move to go into executive session pursuant to CRS section 26.4, 402, 4F, to discuss personnel matters involving An employee who has been given an opportunity to, but has not requested that this discussion be conducted in an open meeting, and specifically discussing matters pertaining to the performance review of the town administrator. Adjourn. I further move to adjourn the board meeting at the conclusion of the executive session.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? Call for the vote. All right, passes 7-0, thank you. All right, now it is April 2nd, 2018, the time is now 9:48 p.m. For the record, I'm Mayor Connie Sullivan, as required by the open meetings law, this executive session is being electronically recorded. Also present at this executive session are the following persons: Mayor Connie Sullivan, Mayor Pro Tem Dan Greenberg, Trustee Bernie Drystad, Trustee Jimmy Kerr, Trustee Jim Caravis? We have a Jim Caravis? Michael Caravis? Became a Jim. Trustee Wendy Miller, Trustee Julie Waugh, and Wendy's got an I instead of a what? Seeing if I'm paying attention. Town Administrator Victoria Simonson and Town Clerk Deborah Anthony,
But I'm not staying,
who
so
will be
don't say
leaving as soon as the recording is set up. This is an executive session for the following purpose: to discuss a personnel matter pursuant to sections 24-6-424F of the Colorado Revised Statutes involving an employee who has been given an opportunity to require that this discussion be conducted in an open meeting, but has not requested an open meeting, and specifically discussing matters pertaining to the performance review of the town administrator. I caution each participant to confine all discussion to the stated purpose of the executive session, and that no formal action may occur in the executive session. If at any point in the executive session any participant believes that the discussion is going outside the proper scope of the executive session, please interrupt the discussion, state an objection. All right, thank you. Does everybody have a copy of what I sent out earlier?
Yeah, that's it.